Hello anyone, welcome back to the TinyPi Pro build update series. So when you're troubleshooting anything, it's important to be able to test your test equipment. How do you know if something's working? Something gives you a false reading. Well, maybe it's not the device, but your device. So let's try to eliminate any issues we can. With the TinyPi Pro, as of right now, mine still will not do much other than turn on. So let's test some of the components separately, individually, plug and play. Let's test it out. So what we have here is my daily driver, as in this is what I use most frequently to play my games. It's got a memory card in it. Yep. So let's fire it up. We'll test this Pi, this card, the television. We'll test it. We'll see everything works here in the system. We'll test the card I bought specific for the TinyPi Pro. We'll test that in this setup. We'll see what happens. And then we'll test the cards within the system itself here. We'll see how she does. Not likely to work at that point, so we'll do a teardown. We'll inspect some of the items. What I'll do is I'll do a rebuild, and we'll just kind of talk about some of the things that I've encountered along the way, taking it apart and putting it together so many times. So let's see. Everything seems to be working here. This system seems to be working fine. It'll load up. So we know as a control that this all works. Okay, so we'll exit out. We'll close her down. We'll go to quit. Shut down. Yes. She'll go through the shutdown sequence. Okay, so we know that card works. We know that Pi works. Together they work with the television. So it looks like it's done. Let's pop the card out. Put this one in. Power off. Power back on. This one should load up, but since it's not formatted for this television, this screen size. This is about as far as I'll get with it. So cringe with me while I cut the power. Okay, okay. So we know this ecosystem as far as the Pi and the cards, it all works. We'll pop both cards into here. You can see the battery's green. Careful when you're putting the SD card in. You may actually slide it just behind the SD card slot. Like if you have to fight to get it in, you're probably not lined up right, but it should just slide nicely in. Sit a little proud. So we'll press and hold to start up. She flashes green. Now I believe this is supposed to flicker if the TinyPi Pro board is communicating with the Pi Zero, but there's no flicker. So push to the white light, push and hold when she's white. Okay, power off. So she won't load with this card, so set that aside. Let's try the card formatted just for it. Again, make sure you're actually inserting the card. Push and hold the power on. She's on. We got no action. Now I can see the screen is on, which probably isn't going to pick up on the camera, but the screen is on. I can tell it's lit. The power light's on, but again, no flickering, no flashing, nothing. So I'm guessing I'm guessing there's no communication there. Now, I've had a few problems with my pins, which I'll get into a little more once we're actually inside. Let's push to white, push and hold, power off. Let's pop the card out. We'll set it aside. What I'll do now is I'll do a teardown. We'll test the Pi Zero board itself independent. We'll test the cards that way. We'll kind of tear it down and just have a look at things as we go over it. I'll explain a few of the issues I've had along the way, and maybe I'll spot something, or one of you clever viewers out there will spot something. Okay, we're in. So yeah, we'll cover those up. Now, I've actually sanded some of my pins down, which I didn't exactly do on camera. Well, I did, but I lost the footage, so I'll just do a quick demo of what I did there. Let's get 2 piles going here. Don't need that for now. Don't need that for now. Okay. Actually, we are going to use that. Set that aside. Okay. So let's, power's off. Let's disconnect this. Set that aside. We'll add the adapter. Let's get this plugged in. We got the HDMI, and then we've got, that should be power. We're going to test my daily driver card, and it should, even though it's not intended for this Pi Zero, it should still, we should still get something from the Pi itself. And it gets to, yeah. So, I mean, it'll even get to the retro Pi screen. Let's see how far she'll go. Well, okay, so we know that the Pi Zero board works. We know that the card works to a certain extent. Okay, so yeah, it didn't like whatever happened there. It kicked me back to the login menu screen. So, cringe with me, we'll power off. But we know at least, again, that this setup works. So we're whittling down what could be an issue here. Let's try this card. And again, I'm expecting a similar result. It should boot up to a certain point, but obviously it won't be formatted for the screen. And yeah, okay. So again, we know the zero's good. We know the cards are good. So in that ecosystem, everything works fine. If I was to just simply put this into a case with a memory card intended to work in this configuration, it would work. I would be able to, have a working device here. So we'll set that aside now. We know all of that works. So, which brings me to this, the actual setup itself, which is just, I'm not gonna lie, it's fantastic. The level of detail. I mean, it says left, right. It says power. I mean, just, it's beautiful. I actually didn't have any trouble assembling it. I think where my trouble is coming in is maybe within the pins. I'm not sure. One of my pins, if you watched the earlier video, I couldn't even pick it out of the pile at this point because I was able to fix it. Again, that was on the footage I lost. But somebody, Monkey Jojo, I believe, recommended just a little love tap with a hammer. And it worked. The pin shot across the table, but I found it, and when I picked it up in my hand, it was working again, seemingly, no issues. So that issue has been resolved. The other issue I was having was the Pi side of the the pin. I was having some trouble with some of them. They weren't fitting into the holes for whatever reason. So what I did to fix that, and it's not ideal, but it did work for me, was I got just a small block of wood with a nice crisp corner on it. I picked up some 220 grit sandpaper just because it was laying around. You'd probably actually want a higher grit if you can get it. Obviously it's more labor and everything. But what I did was I had the block flat on the table here, and then I took the fixed side of the pin, the non-springing side of the pin, and in my fingers I rotated it as I just sort of slid it along the flat edge. I didn't want to create a flat spot on the bottom or sides or anything like that. And I also didn't want to remove so much material that it was sloppy in the hole. So when I assembled it, any of the pins that stuck in there when I dumped it out, when you tip it out, if it doesn't fall out, any of the ones that didn't fall out, I set aside into a separate pile. And then I worked on those. I sanded them down. One more thing about the sanding is I found that some of them had sort of a sharp burr on the fixed side. So perhaps that was because when it's all assembled, and you go to drop the board on, the chances of it finding the hole and lining up and fall, everything working together, you can see it found the hole, but it's not fully seated. There isn't full contact there, or it's not fully inserted into the pie. So that's one thing to look for. And now I'm just wondering if I slid this out. You can see it's not really fully seated. There's a small gap below it. Now if I take it and I just press it in a little, now you can see that it's fully seated in there. Or I don't know, maybe you can see that it's fully seated. And now at this point it actually won't fall out, if it's actually seated in there. So anyway, that's what I had to do for some of them. That was another of the issues. So I had the one stuck pin. I had it was 6, 7, 8 of them, something like that, that weren't working well with the 0 board. See, like this one still sort of has a sharp edge to it. So maybe what you could do is take it and just sort of, again, making sure to spin it, but maybe just sort of break that edge a little bit. So when it is in position, maybe it won't have to fight so hard to fit into the hole. But that was one of the issues I was having. So while she's apart, I guess let's have a look at things. Really slick how it all fits together. I mean, it's a tight fit, that's for sure. It all fits together really nice, and you can tell a lot of thought was put into it. This is probably one of my, she's blinking. This is probably one of my favorite builds that I've done in this sort of fashion. Battery's in. I don't know if it works. battery. The speaker is in. Don't know if it works because haven't booted up yet. I'm actually going to remove the battery, and we'll do it just like a build, I guess. So battery's out. We've got the power button, and you can tell it's the power button because it says power. Set that aside. We've got left and right, and I really like, I gush over this thing because I love simple. You know, oh, you need a shoulder button. Why don't you use the post, add a little switch on your board, and you're good to go. I mean, that's awesome. So we'll take the nuts off. Try not to fry the battery. And I mean, it really is a fairly simple device to put together. This nut seems a little stiff. Okay. So maybe one of you out there can catch something, but I don't know. The board looks fine. We'll take the screws out. There. One more. Okay. Now it fits into this bottom portion pretty snappy. So okay. All right. So this is the meat and potatoes of her. You know, I don't see anything wrong. Obvious, you know, no obvious problem. All of the contacts look clean. I hit them with a little bit of alcohol and a cotton swab. So there doesn't, you know, I don't know. Like I said, the battery will take a charge. The power works. The screen comes on. But for me, the issue seems to be some sort of communication issue between the pins and the Pi. I don't know. So I guess once you have your buttons in, and make sure you've got your arrows right, and get your XY, all that laid out properly. Just drop everything else back in. Hard to mess this part up, but make sure it does fit in. It will kind of fit in, you know what I mean? It sits sort of flush with the edge here. Shouldn't be too stiff or tight or anything. But once you've got the TinyPi board in, Pro board in, just go ahead and throw a screw in the corner, get your nut on. I don't tighten anything beyond hand. So despite what you saw earlier, I actually didn't need a wrench to put this portion together. But again, I'm going to go corner to corner. Hopefully that helps square everything up and sort of tighten the board down evenly. Again, I'm not going to just hand tight. I'll do, okay, and another. And we got one more. And I mean, this thing really goes together quickly. If you guys are hiring for assembly, let me know. I'm getting quite good at it. I'm actually a lot faster when I'm not running my big flappy mouth here. So our last one. Now this is one of the things Like I said, I really liked about it was not only the printing on the buttons themselves, but how they fit and how everything works. So we'll start with the power down on the bottom here, and it can be, I suppose you could probably mix them up, not likely. And then we've got on this side, and you can tell which way it goes because it shouldn't, it's got a little tab that fits in there. And obviously when it's orientated right, it should say LR power in the right places. I think some people were having speaker issues. I don't know if I fell into that trap or not yet because I haven't been able to test it. But I believe that my spring contacts are properly positioned to hit 2 out of the 4 available pads, so hopefully that works out right. But then the shell is just going to fit. Again, it's actually what I have, where did that go? So at this point what I like to do is I actually like to fit the battery in. I've got big meaty fingers that don't like to fit into tight spaces. So, hey, we know she's working. Now, what I would do, feed it through the middle portion of the case here. And this is the orientation that I found works the best for me. And then the case just finishes. What did I do here? Oh my gosh. Okay, don't let that happen. Apparently that's a thing. I didn't know that was a thing, but that is a thing. So anyway, battery goes through. Case fits together nicely when it doesn't have pogo pins magnetized to the speaker. And then what I've been doing is actually I had to round over the edges of my battery case here and then just sort of shoving it in. It sits flush for the most part. It's not proud of the middle case here. And then actually what I'm going to do is alright, now I'm just going to drop the pins in like I normally would, springy side down, unless I misunderstood that. Yeah. I'm getting pretty good at dropping these pins in. I don't know if you guys have been using the tweezers, but I've launched more than my share of them, more than I would have liked to with the tweezers. So I've used the tweezers. I appreciate them being packaged in there, but more as a removal tool and poke and prod kind of tools. Maybe they weren't intended for the pins, but yeah, they seem to launch the pins quite well. So maybe I've heard some stories of guys just sort of disassembling and reassembling and having everything work at that point. So it's really not a big deal for me to be doing this again. It really is just as simple as building blocks, I guess. But having everything work is a whole nother story. I still love the project. Excuse me. I have no problems with Kickstarter, backing things on Kickstarter and stuff like that. I wasn't expecting, something you just pull off of a shelf from a big box store. I'm still happy to support the project and everything, and I can't wait till mine is working someday. I don't want to bother the guy right now he's got his plate full, I'm sure, or they or whatever have their plate full. So, you know, when things cool down from the Kickstarter campaign, I'm going to shoot the guy a message and see if he can help me troubleshoot this. If it's still not working. But yeah, I mean, this is it together. Now, before I put the little bit of work into my pins, this was by far the hardest part of the build. Was getting everything inserted. At this point, though, it's not foolproof, but it's certainly a lot easier to kind of get everything together. I don't know if you could see and hear that, but they will see, some will pop into place and some stay recessed. So if you can get them, and this is where my good buddy Bruce, who I seem to have lost at the moment. There he is. Guy's like a ninja. But I have had some success just taking a pin and just sort of poking around into the hole, seeing I couldn't get it to line up. Because at this point, it looks like maybe only 2 of them. Well, really, I don't know how many it would take to not work. But you can see if you just sort of push the board onto there, some of the pins won't fully engage. Like the corner is engaged now. That one's not fully. So let's see if I can poke it. So maybe if you're still having troubles with the pins now, and I kind of thought I was out of the woods. Like this one's really not gonna pop through. But if you wanted to, what I have done, if you can't or don't want to put the effort into the pins, what you can do is still tip it upside down. If you're lucky, maybe, oh boy, a lot of them will stay into place. I wasn't that lucky. The ones that are there, make sure that you push them down and fully seat them. They're not as likely to, oh, well, I just lost one. Yeah, but you're hopefully less likely to have them fall out. So there you go, tweezers, loving it. So now at this point, what I have to do is I have to figure out which ones coincide with what's left here. So if I was to flip this, it should be 3 across here. So I'll see if I can't just insert them in manually, or, well, I'm not sure how else you would do it. So those 3, which I saw the corner one was giving me a little trouble there. Now, the last time I put this together, I didn't actually have to do this. Some miracle, they managed to, I still had to flip it upside down, but they actually managed to sort of stay in position, so all I had to do at that point was finish pushing them in. So now let me compare to what we have here. Oh, I did that wrong. What do we, should be the 3. Oh, that's what it is. So, not you. Oh. She's in there now. Ah, dang it anyway. All right, well, once it's in there, you know what? Actually, I'm gonna give these ones some attention. No, that one pulled out tougher than the rest. That one maybe. That one. Now, mind you, I have actually paid a little bit of attention to these already. So maybe just a quick hit with the sandpaper to see if that can help. Ideally, what I'd like to be able to do is just sort of drop it on, have everything move freely enough that when it's pressed together, because what I'm thinking is happening a lot, and so what I'm thinking is happening is everything looks good. You go to assemble, but when you go to drop it on, you know, you take pressure off. These spring like they want to do. You go to set the back on, unbeknownst that they may have popped out, you know, and without a visual, how can you tell? You can't see it. So, you know, maybe that's what's going on. Just a thought, a theory. You know, maybe a step in the right direction. So I'm just going to quickly give these a little attention with the sandpaper. And again, I'm trying to rotate as I'm moving so I don't get any flat spots. I want a good connection. And then I'm going to give I also don't want to remove too much material. So just a couple of quick passes and then whatever to clean up the very tip of the fixed end. Again, we don't want any kind of a burr stopping us. You know, you can even test it right there in the board. Looks like it goes fine. I have actually wondered if I couldn't just solder that right in place. You know, the zero becomes dedicated with the pins in place, you know, unless you're pretty slick about unsoldering. But you know, if I was giving this up anyway, what does it matter? But again, just a thought. So that one's going to go in the good pile. I'm just going to give some quick love to these ones. Paying attention to the tip. Okay. Maybe I'll do a before and after with this one. Let's see. Before it goes in, but it's a little sticky, so let's just a couple there, a little bit there. And you probably want to avoid getting that brass or that bronze dust everywhere. Probably not the best thing for electronics to have that dust just floating around. Alright, now this is the one that was just a little sticky. It's still a little sticky in some of the holes. So, you know, maybe I'll just get lucky and put it into one of the slots that it works in. I don't know. But we'll do the rest here just for fun. These were the ones, remember, that were sort of sticky and didn't fall out of the board, the Raspberry Pi, like the others did. So again, this one fits tight in some of the holes. So maybe those holes have been broken in. If I had something small enough to run in there, I would probably just enlarge these holes a little bit. I think that's probably the easiest solution. Unfortunately, my smallest drill bit is a 16th of an inch, and that is quite a bit bigger, and just running this in there doesn't really make much sense. Best I could do is maybe maybe deburr the hole a little bit. Probably isn't gonna hurt. I really don't want to remove too much material though. But maybe anything I can do to help help everything fit together a little nicer. I mean, when you're working with such tiny spots or tiny spaces, and it's not easy. Anybody can build a large hulking thing. I mean, this thing there's a lot of elegance, I think is the word I've been looking for, elegance to it. Believe it or not, it's beautiful in my eye. The thought and care that went into this, I think it shows. This isn't just a scheme or anything. I mean, it really seems like a solid system. Now I'm just taking this sharp bit and I'm just running it lightly over the holes, and maybe just getting rid of a little bit of the sharp edge. I'm doing all the holes because I don't know which are needed and which not. But like I said, anything I can do to help things just sort of line up. Now this one doesn't want to fit at all. Well, it didn't want to fit at all in that hole. Okay, well, last three. So we'll give them a little bit of a sand. Yeah, I'm really excited. I've got the home system. Now I just need the travel system. I've got a similar project. I've done a few of these small, like handheld gaming, Pi powered, Arduino powered, stuff like that. This is by far my favorite at the moment, and the thing's not even working. So that should tell you something. We'll go for another. We'll put it back together. We'll test it again. I'm not expecting any kind of a different result because I really haven't done anything differently. So we'll just drop the pins back in. Now there was one hole. Oh, it's upside down. I think it was the last one on this side. It was sort of preventing the pin from springing back, but maybe I just had a weaker pin in there because it seems fine now. So, not all holes are created equal, that's for sure. So we're just going to drop the pins back in. We'll drop the Pi back on, and we'll see what we got. Hopefully this video isn't too long, because man, I got things to do. I'm just kidding, I don't have shit to do. Because I don't have a TinyPi Pro to play. So I don't think it's too tedious just dropping these in, to be honest. Beats the hell out of soldering. And it's also flexible. like I said, I kind of joked about soldering the pins in place on the Pi. But if you were to do this without these pins, that's exactly what you would have to do. You'd have to solder the board, and so you're committing your zero to something. This, if this didn't work out, or you wanted to test out something else, you can just pull your board out. Your board's still there. It's still good. I think I was reading on the Kickstarter, a guy was complaining about his Pi not working with the pins or something. I mean, the guy sent him the Pi. He sent him the board. I couldn't believe it. So man, kudos to that guy, and please don't pity me like that. I don't mind it. I love it. So last pin, of course, was gonna fight me. Everything feels good. Nice and springy. I love the way everything feels. Everything looks good. But again, this is the most difficult part of the build. Let's see. 1, 2. It looks like 3 pins that aren't seated. So what I can do is I can let off a little pressure, wiggle it around, try to get them again. You can take the head of a pin, you can wiggle it around. See, I got that one through. That one looks good. That one doesn't get one. It looks like only 1 pin, and I just popped it in. Okay. All the pins are in. Now this is where that taking pressure off portion comes in. Now unfortunately I'm holding it on the processor. I don't really want to touch anything. I'd like to be able to test it in this configuration, but I can't. Because at least I would know that the pins were engaged. If I, I could try to, what I could try to do is drop a couple of screws in and see if I can't maybe test it with the back off. That would actually be quite useful. So I would like to drop a screw. I would like to get this down. No, I don't know. I doubt that's going to go down far enough to put pressure on the board, but what do I know? Oh. Wow, that seemed to work. Okay. Well, let's well, I guess we'll go corner to corner. Why break tradition now? I wish I actually would have thought of this sooner. But every time you do something, you get a little better at it. And my friends, I've done this now numerous times. So let's get. I'm only gonna put the third one in here, and that's to make sure that the pins stay snugged into their holes. Okay. All the pins look like they're seated. Yeah, everything actually looks pretty good. So Um, power lights up, so let's see if it'll... Oh, I didn't put a card in it. Well, it works without the back on, not that it shouldn't. So power down. I'm going to put the daily driver card in just to see. Power on. Now we got some activity. On the, I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, now, yeah. Well, I don't know, like I said, if that's, you know, nothing loads up. So we'll put in the card. We'll put in the card just formatted just for the device here. Power on. Power's on. Power's on. Screen's on. So that's it. That's as far as I've gotten. Still not up and running. I still love the build. Love the project. But I don't know. This, like I said, this is as far as I've got. So if anybody's got some tips or can help me troubleshoot this, and maybe I'm just a moron. Well, I know I'm a moron, but maybe I've made a simple mistake and one of you clever fellas can catch it for me. So other than that, hey, thanks for watching and hanging out. Okay, a quick addendum. Something occurred to me when I was cleaning up. Something that I really liked was that the HDMI port was available assembled. Why that didn't occur to me sooner, I told you before, I'm a moron. So what I thought was interesting was, let's, again, the battery's good. Let's power on. Screen's on. Watch what happens here. You can't see, there's a Pi in the, a little raspberry in the corner. What the frog? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. It'll kick me out with an illegal instruction, but the Pi works independently of the TinyPi Pro board as far as the HDMI is concerned, which makes sense. That's where it's plugged into, but I don't know. I just thought of that right at the end, but hey, thanks for hanging.